Welcome to At Work on Connected to India, Mr. William Dalrymple. It's a real privilege and a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Himanshu.
Now, this is a question I've been wanting to ask a historian, and you're the perfect person because you also happen to know this gentleman called Shashi Tharoor. What was your first reaction when you heard his Oxford Union speech?
Well, I'd been with him on the same side in the predecessor to that, which was we were all at the Supreme Court debating the same subject. I was part of a three-man team with Shashi, I think 2 months before, and we won that debate as he did. So I think he used the same speech. I'd heard it all before. is the short answer.
You've been living in India since 1989. What attracted you to settle in India?
I have just arrived as a backpacker. It hadn't actually been my plan to go to India at all. I wanted to go, and I was a very keen archaeologist in those days, and I wanted to dig in Iraq. Then for various reasons, my plans fell through. Saddam Hussein closed the British School of Archaeology, which he said was a nest of British spies. I never got there, so I never discovered if it was or not. And I ended up going with my friend who's going to India. Taught in Dehradun for a bit, fell in love with the place, came straight back after college, and had been wrote City of Gins immediately, made a living as a foreign correspondent for a bit, and all these, I've now written 10 books, I think, with an Indian, some South Asian link.
Great. But you studied in the UK, and but you got interested into writing about the Middle East, Asia, and in particular in India. How did that start?
Well, it came out of traveling there as a student, like many students in the 80s. I set off with a backpack on my back and got interested in the places I saw. In my case, I was very lucky because my college at Cambridge had travel grants which you could apply for, and if you won, there was actually quite a lot of money available. And I got 3 successive travel grants from Trinity College, Cambridge, which paid for really quite extensive travels around the region, stuff I'd never been able to afford otherwise. And all my life before this was really about archaeology in Britain, and from the moment I landed in Delhi on the 26th of January 1984, in a sense, the focus of my life swiveled, the telescope turned, and I'm still here. I'm now about to be, my 57th birthday is in a fortnight, so...
Fantastic. I mean, you did arrive in India in a fairly tumultuous year, if I must say, 1984.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember very well, I think the first week of lectures at Cambridge, and I was studying with a man called Neil Seal, whose family had been very connected with the Gandhi family when the day Mrs. G was shot, and then the Sikh riot. And all that, yes. And I was around passing through the Punjab while Operation Blue Star happened, and then found myself the far side in Kashmir, unable to get back because I couldn't afford a flight, and the Punjab was closed. So all that was very much, and that gave me a taste for not just the history, but the politics and the tumultuous tides of modern South Asia as well.
You've said that there is a national amnesia amongst the British when it comes to the empire. Now, my question is that are there any, or can there be any, or should there be any ramification with regards to that amnesia in context of the modern India and Britain relationship? Should there be any? Can there be any? What do you think?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the reasons that this amnesia is being challenged now is that there's a whole generation of Indians who've grown up, ethnic Indians who've grown up with British passports in Britain, who are challenging that amnesia and partly just wanting to know their own history, as well as examine other people's. And it is people, I mean, and a good example of this is Sathnam Sanghera, whose Empireland has been a huge hit this year in Britain and woken many people up to issues they simply weren't aware of before. I've been writing about this for 20 years, and when I started, I felt I was a bit of an outlier, that this was stuff that really no one else was interested in and no one else was writing about. And I've been very lucky in that by the time that my fourth book on the company, the final volume of this company quartet came out, The Anarchy, not only was Empire absolutely at the center of things with, the aftermath of Shashi and just before Sathnam, but also the other subject really, which this deals with, which is the whole issue of corporate, the dangers of big corporations, and the East India Company was the biggest and most dangerous of all the corporations.
So let's change gears, or shall we say change the chapter on Jaipur Literature Festival, of which you've been a founding member and one of the key figures in putting the festival together. From 100 attendees to 2006 to it's become the most definitive literature festival of the world. What has been the X factor? Why has it become so popular? What do you think?
I think there were several things. There were a lot of literary festivals that started up in Britain in the 1980s, and you saw lots of Indian authors there. This was the period when Salman Rushdie was very much around, when Vikram Seth and Amitav Ghosh and Arundhati Roy and all that first wave of Indian authors in English were winning prizes. And whenever you went to Hay-on-Wye or Cheltenham, you'd see tons of Indian authors. But I was living in India, and very few of them actually lived here. Amitav Ghosh at that stage was in New York.
Yeah.
Vikram Seth was in Wiltshire. Salman had moved to New York. Actually, of the really big names, probably only Arundhati was actually living full time in India.
Yeah.
And you never saw any of these authors, except occasionally when they launched a book. And they do a small event at the British Council. So it wasn't a very complicated idea to take the model of Hay-on-Wye or Edinburgh or Cheltenham and transpose it to Jaipur. But where we were very lucky was that the wonderful Faith and John Singh, who started Noki, had this Jaipur Virasat Festival, out of which we grew. And they came up with the extraordinary venue, Diggy Palace. They came up with the idea of making it into something that was half festival, half mela, half marriage, big Indian shadi, and all those factors played in. But plus the sheer beauty of Jaipur, the fact that it was very close to Delhi and connected by airports. And we found, to our amazement, that the greatest authors in the world just said yes. And as soon as our reputation grew, both for the fun authors had when they were with us, but also for the size of the audiences and the amount of books which got sold, we very rarely had people saying no. I mean, there's some people who just don't like going to book festivals or doing events. Like my favorite modern American novelist, Cormac McCarthy, does not do book events, but everyone else who does would tended to say yes and came, and we were very lucky. We got them all. I think we chose the right idea at the right time, like all ideas that work.
Yes, it is a great success story. And how have you seen the demographics change over the years, and how do you measure success beyond the level of authors? What kind of numbers have you been receiving, and what does it look like for this year?
The numbers grew, as you said, from I have it here.
100.
Yeah, we had a handful in our first year. By 2007, we were big enough to fill the Diggy Durbar Hall, which has 250 seats. But I remember being very nervous on day 1 or 2 when it was half empty because no one turned up. 500 people came in 2008. And by 2020, we had 500,000.
There are a bunch of new things which you're doing this year. One, it is hybrid. Second, you've taken it out of Diggy Palace for the first time. And so what sort of atmosphere are you expecting this year? You still have been able to pull some really big names there and see really interesting things we'll be discussing on the agenda. So what kind of atmosphere are you expecting?
So I'm expecting much smaller numbers than before, which will be a bit of a relief because you don't want to turn into a super spreader event like a political rally or something. And then so I think it's going to be more intimate. Clark's, we've had music events at for many years, and so it isn't a completely new venue.
Okay.
It was always our second venue, our evening venue. But I'll miss Diggy. I love Diggy, and it was a gorgeous space. maybe we'll get back there one year. I don't know, we'll see. Yeah, but I'm amazed how many people. I mean, in January when we postponed, I thought we'd lose all our international authors and that no one would turn up. But I've just been given the latest updated list, and about half our biggest stars are coming still, which is great. So, you know, I mean, it won't be a normal year in a whole variety of ways. It'll be a diminished thing from the monster festivals that we've had in the past, but it's beginning of a return to normality, and it's happening. So it's great.
William, you have picked up a very interesting topic for your own session which you're holding. You know, Indianization of Southeast Asia, and we living in Singapore have literally lived that. You know, I've seen that one of the biggest festival of Indian arts called Kalautsavam happened in Singapore. It's very intense across 10 days. And the iconic Esplanade Theatre here literally digs up some of the art forms which are not even seen so much in India. So I was particularly interested to know what is it that you will be talking about in your session.
Yes, and I think I'm always amazed how few people in India realize that Angkor Wat is the biggest Hindu temple in the world.
Right.
And they're always rather amazed when they go there and find the churning of the ocean on the back wall, or Kurukshetra, or the scenes from the Ramayana. Those that do know about it often have a slightly confused idea that there were sort of actual colonies of India in Southeast Asia, which probably didn't happen, although there was certainly emigration on a large scale. There's actually been a great deal of scholarly work done on this over the last, particularly 70, 80 years. I think initially there was a Greater India Society, which Tagore was a patron of, which put out the idea of Indian colonies in the 1930s in a great sort of nationalistic, patriotic fervor. You know, to tell the British partly, you know, it's not just you that's had colonies, we've had them too. In the end, those colonies I don't think ever existed. I think what's fascinating about Indic influence in Southeast Asia is it was peaceful, and it was Brahmins and writers and artists and Brahmins and Buddhist monks who brought the culture. So in that particular session, I'm just the moderator, and I'm speaking to two wonderful historians who have written about this. Andrea Akri, who's an expert in Buddhism, particularly esoteric Buddhism and how it traveled from India, and Himanshu Verma. We've also got other sessions. We've got Malini Saran and Vinod Khanna on the Ramayana in Southeast Asia and how that spread.
Yes.
And this is the subject of my next book, so I'm eagerly learning from the speakers who have trod these roads before me. It didn't happen by force of arms, and that's in a sense what's interesting. Much more like the way that Greek culture diffused around ancient Europe. So, you know, first the Romans, and then, you know, wherever you go in Europe, you find now the classic sort of Parthenon facade on public buildings all over Europe. But it didn't mean that the Greeks had conquered Sweden or Norway. It was the example of their high civilization, which was considered enormously attractive and spread by example and by. So anyway, getting all those little nuances right, and getting the balance between understanding how these things happen, but not making it sound like a sort of nationalist ego trip. I don't know whether you've ever seen that Goodness Gracious Me sketch with Sanjeev Bhaskar, where the uncle that says, Indian! Jesus, Indian! Leonardo da Vinci, Indian! I mean, my book is in danger of sounding a bit like that if I don't watch out. So I've got to find a middle path.
Correct. It's clearly India's soft power, which is getting inroads into all these different cultures and countries.
Exactly. That's exactly the story. And that, to me, is a more remarkable story than a story of colonization.
True. William, thank you very much for your time. I'm sure you're extremely busy right now. I wish you all the best for a fantastic JLF.
Thank you, Himanshu. Looking forward to this.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.